If you've got a small garden and you'd like to operate on the 40-metre band, here's a modified end-fed half-wave that you might want to take a look at. It's half the length of a normal end-fed half-wave, yet it's got exactly the same bandwidth. Yet it takes up half the space, or even less. Let me explain. Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining me on the Waters and Stanton video channel. I get emails from a number of people. I get emails from a lot of people actually. I had one a few days ago from Adrian. Now, Adrian says, I hope this is not a silly question, but can you feed a vertical antenna from the top? Well, it may sound a silly question, but in actual fact it's not as silly as it sounds. Because, yes, you can. And the reason I know you can is because I've done it. I've got a copy of Practical Wireless magazine. And that was printed, or this particular edition was printed in May 1965. And the reason that I say yes, it can be done, if I can find the right page here somewhere, is, here we are. The reason I say that it can be done is because there's an article in there about feeding a inverted L actually, which basically is sort of a modified vertical antenna. It tells you how to feed it from the top rather than the bottom. And would you believe that this article is written by Peter Waters, G30JV, and in May 1965. That was 59 years ago. 59 years ago I wrote that article. Anyway, let's take a look at how you can feed a vertical from the top rather than the bottom. Let's first of all take a look at the inverted L antenna. It's an L, it's inverted. And we normally feed it at the base. There's the earth there. We feed the antenna at the base, bit of coax going there, the inner conductor of the coax goes there, and the shield goes down to earth. And we can make this antenna resonant. If we make it resonant, it'll be a quarter wave, and it's very popular for the lower frequency bands, particularly for 160 and 80 meters. The dimensions of the antenna are critical in terms of making that a quarter wave, because we need to get a low impedance at the bottom there. But we can make the top section longer and the bottom section shorter, or we can make it longer, the top section shorter there. The critical thing is that must be a quarter wave long to get a decent match. We try and get the vertical section fairly long, because basically this antenna is a vertically polarized antenna, and it will give low angle radiation, as all vertical antennas do. There is a bit of high angle that comes off of it, and the amount of high angle that comes off of it depends on whether this vertical section is long or short. If it's short, then we get a significant amount of radiation off the top section, which is predominantly horizontal. But for practical purposes and for performance purposes, generally speaking, we regard this as a vertically polarized antenna, and it seems to work quite well. Now, it doesn't have to be a quarter wave long. You can make it longer if you wish. Then it becomes a non-resonant antenna, and you need some sort of matching unit at the bottom, and there's a number of remote matching ATU units about on the markets, and provided they're weatherproof, then you can put it outside at the bottom of the antenna at the feed point, take your coax into the matching unit, and the connection of the antenna goes to the output of the matching unit. And that seems to work quite well. And it gives a very nice general purpose antenna. Again, it's predominantly vertically polarized. Now, you do need an earth or ground plane with this antenna, because like all vertical antennas, it benefits from a radial system. Now the radial system is really a question of what you can fit into your garden. As a general rule, you need something like about 8 or 10 radials. They don't have to be a quarter wave long, because a quarter wave on ground is not resonant as a free sort of bit of wire would be in the air. And really and truly, we've found in experience that it's just the number of radials, the amount of wire you have on the ground, rather than the length. The length is not really critical. And as amateurs, we have to make the best of what we've got. So put down, say, 10 or 12 radials, as long as you can get them, even if they're only about 3 or 4 meters long. It doesn't really matter. At least you've got some sort of ground plane system for the antenna to work against. But we're talking about feeding this antenna at the other end, the high voltage point. So let's see what we can do there. If we feed the antenna at the other end, what we do is we take the vertical section straight down to earth. So that section goes straight down to earth and to the radial system that we've got on the ground. This section goes along, and we have either a medium or high impedance here. Now, if we have a medium impedance here, we could actually put a 9 to 1 unan in there, and then take a bit of coax into the shack, and really, I'm going to say hope for the best, but that is really what you do with a 9 to 1 unan. But it usually gives you the ability to match the antenna. Now, the advantage of feeding it here is that if you're in a house upstairs, you can basically take the end of that antenna close to the house, then have your 9 to 1 unan, take the output from the unan, short length of coax, into the shack, and you can match it with the internal matching unit on your transceiver. So there is a distinct advantage in end feeding if you've got an upstairs shack and you want to make sure that the coax feed line is short. And also it means to say that you haven't got to have a long length of coax going down along there to the ground and feeding the antenna there. There's another advantage as well, because let's say we're going to use this on 40 meters, and 40 meters is probably an ideal band for this. It means to say that on 40 meters, we're only going to have something like 5 meters of wire there and 5 meters of wire there, 10 meters long, quarter wave on 40 meters. That's quite compact, because it means to say that if you've got a garden which is fairly short, even if it's only about 5 meters, 5 or 6 meters deep, you can still get this antenna in. If you choose to use the 9 to 1 unan, it becomes a multiband antenna. But you can actually use a 49 to 1 unan, provided you make this a quarter wave length of wire, total length of wire quarter wave. We've got a high voltage point there, and we can feed that with a 49 to 1 unan, which makes a nice, convenient, compact antenna for 40 meters. The downside is that it's not multiband. Now, although it's effectively an end-fed half wave, because we're feeding it in this way, it will only be resonant on odd quarter wave lengths. So, for example, our 40 meter one will work on 40 meters, 7 megahertz. The next odd number of quarter waves is 3 quarter waves, which will be on 21 megahertz. So really and truly, this is basically a single band antenna, but it does mean to say that you can very simply get this antenna up in a small garden, and you get quite good results with it. The other thing is, of course, is that we don't have a problem with the impedance match there, because we're taking this straight down to earth. We've got no problem with matching impedances there on the vertical section. We're feeding at the end there, the high impedance end, and that is a nice way to feed it. As I say, you cut out all the coax run and you just feed it with a 49 to 1 unan. So using this method for, and I'm going to concentrate on 40 meters because that is a very popular band at the moment, and also it means to say the antenna is fairly compact. using this antenna on 40 metres, it's a nice compact antenna which will give you some low angle radiation, but by all accounts there's a significant amount of high angle from it, and I say that for no other reason than the fact, as I said earlier in this video, that I've worked a lot of stations using inverted L antennas. So it's a serious contender if you've got a small garden. Are there any other advantages? Well, we've talked about the advantage of having a very short coax lead to it. It makes it much easier to feed the antenna. Also, with verticals, with any antenna actually, the wind and the rain can cause static build-up, and that is part and parcel of the noise problems we get. If you use this antenna where the antenna is directly earthed into the ground, the bottom of the antenna, which by the way is a high current point, of course. If you use this configuration, what actually happens is that the static build-up is just leaked away continuously into the ground system. If you have coax feed, then you've got a gap between the bottom of the antenna and the earth point, and you can get static build-up there. And as I say, it's both wind and rain will cause static build-up. So it tends to be a quieter antenna, and I recall when I built this antenna all those years ago that it was quite a quiet antenna. So there we are. It's a simple way of making probably a single band antenna. You could make it multi-band and try feeding it from the top with a 9-to-1 unan. I think that will work fairly well. But it's an interesting project, so give it a try. So Adrian, thank you for your email. It was very nice to get your email, and I hope that you now realise it wasn't a silly question at all. It will actually work. Let's do a quick summary of where we are with the inverted L antenna. It's in the shape of an L. We've got several choices. We can feed it at the bottom with a piece of coax cable, with the inner going to the vertical section, the outer going to earth with the radial system. We can actually make this antenna a bit longer. If we make it a bit longer so that it's not an exact resonant length on a particular band, then we can replace that coax with a 9-to-1 un and get some sort of reasonable match, and we feed that again with coax cable. It means to say, of course, that we have to have the coax cable running out of the house, down the garden and connecting there, so you've got a length of coax cable. We also know that if we make this vertical section fairly shortish, we will get a significant amount of current flowing in the beginning of the horizontal section, and that will give us both vertical and horizontal polarization, and it means to say that we will be able to work local stations on 40 metres and, with a bit of luck, some DX on 40 metres. If on the other hand you want to work some DX, then either leave it at 5 metres and 5 metres, or even raise that to say 6 metres and make that 4 metres. It's entirely up to you, but the longer that is and the shorter that is, the stronger the low angle radiation will be. And the shorter that is and the longer that is, the more predominant radiation will begin to be from the horizontal section. In other words, horizontally polarized, low to the ground, therefore high angle. So that's one way of using the quarter wave. Now, if we go to the alternative and perhaps more interesting way, we earth that section there and we take the horizontal section across there. If we make that exactly a quarter wave length total, it is a resonant antenna with a high voltage point there, and we can feed it with a 49-to-1 unan. And I said earlier on in the video, it's an end-fed half wave. It acts like an end-fed half wave, so we can feed that with a 49-to-1 unan, even though it's only a total length of 10 metres, which is a quarter wave on the 40-metre band. That works quite well. What you can't do, even though it's working like an end-fed half wave, it doesn't work on its harmonics, because on the next band up, which will be the 20 metre band, we've got a current point there, we've got voltage there, and we've got current there, which is low impedance. So 49:1 is a complete mismatch. So the idea of a 49:1 unknown only works when it's a quarter wave or odd quarter waves long. So that 49:1 unknown would work on the 40 metre band and also on the 15 metre band. But we can do away with it if we want to. Preferably make this wire a bit longer, so say it's about 12 metres long, so it's not resonant on any particular band. And then we can try feeding it with a 9:1 unknown, and that would give us a multi-band. Now, as I said earlier in the video, I work a lot of stations using inverted L antennas, and they work extremely well. They get very good results, and surprisingly, they do get some reasonable amount of high angle radiation for local contacts. But it does mean to say that because the antenna is radiating a significant amount of vertical energy, there is some apparently good low angle radiation properties, and that does exist because this antenna is very popular on the LF bands, particularly on 160 and 80 meters. Now, there's something which, in simple terms, we call phase cancellation. When a signal leaves your vertical antenna, it aims itself at some particular angle towards the sky. Now, we know that the energy from a vertical antenna is predominantly low angle, and although we get a bit of high angle from a horizontal section of a vertical antenna, in a typical situation we're talking about quite a significant amount of low angle radiation, vertical radiation from the vertical. And on the lower frequency bands, although there's phase cancellation, it's not so serious as it is as you go higher in frequency. And the higher you go in frequency, the more significant is the phase cancellation. That's a fact. So on the 40 metre band, we have got a bit of phase cancellation, which means to say that you're not really going to get anything below 10 degrees to have any significant effect on your signal at the far end. Basically anything below 10 degrees is going to be quite severely attenuated. For several reasons, actually. We've got the phase cancellation that occurs, and that's a fact of life. You can't get away from that, and it becomes more evident as you go higher in frequency. You've also got the fact that a vertical antenna depends very heavily upon the earth beneath it, and it's not only the earth beneath it in the immediate vicinity, it's also the earth that extends out several wavelengths beyond that. And if you're in an urban situation and you talk about wavelengths of 2 or 3 wavelengths long, you're going to have house foundations, you're going to have roads, you're going to have paths, you're going to have patios, lots and lots of concrete, all of which is not conducive to an effective high efficiency antenna. And thirdly, despite what may have been said, you do get a significant amount of absorption through houses, and it's very simple to explain that. It's basic common sense, really. If you were to strip a house apart, you'd find that there's, well, I won't say miles, but quite a few yards of wiring. Lots and lots of wiring. You also got quite an amount of copper piping, probably connecting the central heating system together. Now, we know that wiring and copper piping are all very conducive to conducting RF. And we know from our sort of experience with Yagis that we only have to have a half wave length or just a bit longer to reflect the signal, or a bit shorter to direct the signal. And it's inconceivable that all this wiring in the houses adjacent to you would not absorb some of the energy. So there's one or two things going against us. But the good news is that despite all this, the antennas do work, and you're in exactly the same situation as somebody else down the road. So don't let it get you down, just be aware of the true situation. Before I close this video, many thanks for all the emails you send and the encouragement and so forth. It's very much appreciated. Thank you for your support at the shop, and thank you for your support on the website. We do try and get goods out the same day, provided we get the order by around about 2:30 in the afternoon, then we can normally ship the goods out. And we do take an interest in our customers. We're not really worried whether you're going to buy an HF transceiver or a few plugs. We know that both those items can be very important to you. You want to get on the air or get on and sort your antennas out. So we do take a pride in trying to get the goods out quickly. And as I say, we normally get them out the same day if we get your orders in by around about 2:30. So bear that in mind. In the meantime, you carry on, enjoy your ham radio, and thanks again for your support on this video channel. It's much appreciated. Don't forget to press the subscribe button. All it means to say is you get notification when I get another video. In the meantime, you enjoy your ham radio, you take care. Look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now.